Kerm Martian here, back with Train Sim World and a Class 802. We're going to take a look at my GSLR over here that's telling me lots of things. But let's get the train set up, get ready to go, and then I will tell you all about what we're doing here today. This is the first in a brand new series that I'm starting, where I am going to be showing you my train simulator. Right, so first things first, sorry, not actually set up properly here. Let's turn our key in real life and in train simulator. Let's put ourselves in neutral, cancel our AWS.
TPWS and AWS operational.
Alright, we want to load some passengers. Platforms over here. Left hand, open the doors. In the meantime, let me set up some headlights. I don't have a switch for that yet. I will register my GSMR 2C65. Registered. We've got GSMR GB 2C65, matching what we see in the game right there. We are at Dawlish. Looks like we have some doors open on both sides for some reason. That doesn't seem accurate. Slightly concerning. Anyway, our passengers are loaded. Platform is over there. We'll lock over here. As you can see, my panels are just in a little bit of a test location at the moment. Alright, we got our interlock. We're ready to go. So, set ourselves into forward. We got a green signal. And press my brake hold. Off we go. Let go, brake hold. I'm sorry, I said we were at Dawlish. We are in fact not at Dawlish. We are just departing from, what platform was that? Platform 4 at Exeter St. David's. And we are heading south and west through the English Riviera. Got a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign there. We can notch up a little bit here. Move my monitor remote. That's not something we need. 25 miles an hour. 28 coast. Get my mouse out of the way. 75 miles an hour. Now, I generally try to ignore the Train Sim World HUD and focus on what I can see around me. But because I only recently got this new route, I'm not yet super familiar with things like where the speed limit changes are. So, I will be relying at least on noticing some of the speed limit changes up there. But I do know we have a number of stations to get through. We have one Exeter station, 2 intermediary stations, and then we can stop at Dawlish. And let's go into full power. There we go, that's notch 4. Train Sim World 6 introduces a new API, which now makes it possible for me to connect my train simulator controller to Train Sim World. To date, I've primarily, AWS is cleared, used my train simulator with Train Sim Classic, Train Simulator Classic, as it's now called, because there was no API for Train Sim World, but now I can. However, there's a few things that are not really supported. Some things are great, some things not so much. So there's a few things that you'll see in front of me that don't quite make sense, and I will do my best to mention them as we go. Alright, we are going fast, 71 miles an hour. Let's do our little brake test. We want to lose 10 miles an hour, so I'm going to notch 2 of my braking, watch for a nice 10 mile an hour reduction. I got a good sense of how quickly we decelerate, and I'll go back to full power, bring us right up to 75 miles an hour. This is a Class 365 power brake controller. This is a real networker Class 365 power brake controller that has now been connected to my train simulator setup. And a number of the instruments in front of me, okay, now we have a 100 mile an hour limit, are also from real trains, like this GWR speedometer here that has ATP LEDs, so you can actually see speed limits and restrictions marked out there. LEDs. This air gauge here is from a US train. This AWS Sunflower here is of course from a UK train. And many of the buttons here around me, you can't see my headlight console over here. That panel has not yet been connected. But it's my vigilance pedal. See if I lift my foot, I'll put it back down again. I have a real pedal under the table, not a train pedal, but a pedal nonetheless. Anyway, many of these buttons here have come from old train dashboards, like Class 313 dashboards. We're at 94 miles an hour. You can see my speedometer needs a little bit of calibration there, but we're mostly in good shape here. 7.5 miles to Dawlish. Gotta keep our speed up here. It's about 9:30 in the morning on a cold January morning here in the southwestern part of England. We just left Exeter and we are heading our way to Plymouth. Although this train will continue on to Penzance. Got a 75 mile an hour limit coming up. As you can see in the top right of my screen. I don't know why I'm pointing, you can't actually see my monitor. Although I am considering whether this is the best way to show my train simulator, having the camera where it is. I'm not convinced that it is. It's not going past coast. We're going to coast along here, and maybe when we get a little bit before that upcoming signal, we can start decelerating down to the 75 mile an hour limit. One of the things that's not quite right here is that this VCB light is illuminated. Well, to be fair, I don't actually know if that's correct or not. I'm not sure. We are in a diesel Class 802. No pointing in. There's no wire, no overhead line above us. 80 miles an hour, 79. I think we can let the rest of that coast off. So we are operating on the diesel engines that are mounted under our coaches here today, Class 802. So our line LED, line voltage LED, is not illuminated, which is correct. Because we certainly don't have any AC power coming into our train. I don't know if our VCB light is supposed to be illuminated. VCB stands for vacuum circuit breaker. Other things that are fully functional here include our door controls left and right. Although, as you might have noticed at Exeter, if you are extremely keen-eyed, our door open buttons did not illuminate when I had the doors open, which I believe they're supposed to. Unfortunately, that's because while TrainSim World provides a way through the API to say if the doors are interlocked, closed and locked, that's our blue LEDs here, it does not appear to have any way to show if the doors are released, which is our red LEDs. In particular, we need to know which side is released, left or right. And other than guessing that based on which buttons were pressed last, there's currently no way through the API to tell. 73 miles an hour, a 75 limit, 74. You'll also notice, if you look very carefully, that my speedometer and the train sim world HUD at the top left of my recorded screen don't always quite match. And that's a little bit of debugging troubleshooting that I have to do. This is a real service. I did not pick a scenario for today. I picked a timetabled regular old service, hopefully modeled after the real world. But who knows? Still at the 75 limit. I would assume that they've put in the current schedule for this route. This is the correct rolling stock. I believe they've modeled Riviera as accurately as possible. It's not a backdated route or anything. As we go along, you may see, if you watch, you'll see my air gauge change when we brake. So the red needle there is our reservoir, and the black needle is our brake cylinder. Brake height, excuse me. Green signal, 73 and 80, we put the cylinder in the 1. Clear EWS, clear signal. Got a 70 mile an hour limit coming up soon. So let's get ourselves down for that. Clear AWS. There's our 70. East Coast. Clear signal. Here's our 70 side right here. And we are coming around the bend here into quite a spectacular view. I once visited the beach here and very much enjoyed watching trains, including HSTs, class 125s, go past. Alas, those trains have recently, very recently as of this recording, been finally retired at the end of 2025. And alas, there will be no more HSTs in the southwest of England, or in fact, in all of England except for bad trips, preserve traction. There is still a fleet of 125s in Scotland. ScotRail runs them, and of course,
We are now approaching Dawlish.
let's get our speed down. In fact, I've left that a little bit late. I've overcooked that ever so slightly. Nah, I'm doing fine. Very fine, in fact. Clear AWS. Still getting used to how the Class 802 actually stops what its braking performance is like. In my quite extensive testing of my train simulator setup here, I've been mostly using the Class 801, not as much the Class 802, but they are very similar trains, right? Full service, put myself in neutral so I don't have to keep my foot on the pedal, left hand.
This is a Great Western Railway service to Penzance.
Passengers are loading. Alright, we unlock our doors. Left hand again. There we go, we got our interlock. Put ourselves to forward again. I'll give 2 on the bell. Doesn't really make any sense because we're apparently doing driver-only operation. But watch our brake gauge fall.
Welcome aboard this Great Western Railway service
brake
to
hold.
Penzance. We'll be calling at Plymouth, Newton Abbot,
That's 2.
Totnes, Ivy Bridge,
And
Plymouth,
release.
Devonport, Dockyard, Keyoung, St. Budo Ferry Road, Saltash, St. Germans, Lisgard, Bodwin Parkway, Lostwithiel, Park, St. Austell, Truro, Redroof, Camborne, Hale, St. Earth, and Penzance.
That's a lot of stops to make. Our next stop for my
The
leg of the
next
journey
station is
is Teignmouth. Yes. Alright, that was all the way into Knots 4. Another thing to note, if you look carefully, you may see that I'm using my controller a little bit weirdly. Sometimes I kind of use a two-handed approach to this PVC here. It's quite stiff, and I don't know how well you can see it, but it's kind of a raw metal chassis mounted on the floor here. I haven't put it in a nice little box or given it rubber feet to stabilize it, and it does tend to kind of rock if I'm not careful. So sometimes I need to use 2 hands. I think I may also have to do a little lubrication to make it slightly easier to move the handle. I've been working on this project now for about 3 years, and I just finally, about a week ago, finished this little table here that's supporting my panels. This is far from finished, by the way. This is still in the version 0.5 stage. I intend to convert these panels into more professional looking panels, clear AWS, clear signal. But I've reached a point in this project where I think it's worth showing the status and doing a bit of a streaming again. I've done a few streams with earlier intermediate stages of this project, especially when I've had only one much simpler and smaller panel in front of me and my PVC, or even before I got my PVC, when I just had things like a speedometer and my AWS Sunflower. But I don't believe I ever took some of those streams and turned them into videos to post. I may take a look through some of those and see if they're worth posting as a prequel to this video, or I may just grab clips out of that to show a bit of a demonstration of how this setup looked as it was in development. We have a 75 mile an hour limit here, with a 60 limit coming up soon. Only 1 mile until our next stop, so we don't want to get too carried away. The coastline here is beautiful. I have once ridden a Class 125
We are now
HST.
approaching Teignmouth.
60 limit. We are over. There we go. See, I missed that one. A few years ago, I took this. And let's not overdo the braking again. But yeah, we have plenty of space. AWS, clear. And I apologize if I fan the brakes a little bit to start with. As I said, I'm still getting used to the braking characteristics of this particular train. That wasn't bad. All right.
Teignmouth.
Full service. Left hand, doors open.
This is a Great Western Railway service to Penzance.
I really like the announcements. It's a great touch. That's new for Train Sim World 6 as well. Alright, we are ready to lock the doors. interlock. There it is. Turn the bell. Next up, Newton Abbot. Brake hold. Notch 1. Release brake hold.
Welcome aboard this
Notch
Great
2.
Western Railway service to Penzance. We'll be calling at Newton Abbot, Totnes, Ivybridge, Plymouth, Devonport, Dockyard, Keyoung, St Gudo Ferry Road,
Notch 3.
Saltash, St Germans, Liscard, Godwin Parkway, Lost Withiel, Parr, St Austell, Truro, Redruth,
Notch 4.
Campbell, Hale, St Earth, and Penzance.
If anyone happens to work for a train operating company
The
like
next station
GWR
is Newton Abbot.
or LNER or EMR or any of the companies that are now using Class 80X, or I guess it's 8XX now, 801, 802, 805, 810, I would be very grateful for any manuals that would allow me to be a little bit more precise with some of the things that are more styled than strictly mechanical operation. For example, what the policies are around how you notch up when you're leaving a station. I generally try to, gradually go notch 1, notch 2, notch 3, notch 4, but I don't know if there are more specific guidelines for what speed you should get to for each of those companies before you notch up further. Clear signal, we're in that 80 zone right now, within 90 coming up, 4 miles to Newton Abbot. It's a pretty winter morning here on the south coast. The sun is shining, we've got a few little clouds in the sky, and it's nice. 90. I'm admiring the sky instead of actually accelerating. Full power. And as I've said in so many previous streams, this is why it is always, I feel like I always do worse when I stream and play Train Simulator rather than just play Train Simulator, or even just play in silence, edit the commentary track, thinking about what's interesting. Of a shallot, while also trying to be a precise train driver. 75 miles an hour. I'm also trying to avoid the temptation to look too much at that top bar in Train Simulator and instead rely on my speedometer and my other instruments here to tell me what I need to know. I do have a lever for the horn. In fact, I have high tone, low tone, soft low, soft high, 4 directional switch. Got a 60 limit coming up soon. Vigilance pedal. Means I need to lift my foot off the vigilance pedal and get back on again. Left here. And get ready to lose my speed again. But I need to get the housing for that horn lever. There's AWS bringing us down to 60. So I don't have that horn lever installed right now. I think I was starting to say earlier, and I interrupted myself. I've been documenting this whole process, this 3-year process now to build this train simulator on my blog, on my personal website, z80.me. That's Z80 or Z80 if you prefer, .me, M-E. And that's where I post about my projects, whether they're my graphic calculator projects, here's the 60 limit, my train simulator projects, my electronics projects, etc. AWS is cleared. That AWS was just to bring us down to 60 miles an hour. There was no train ahead of us. And now we're coasting along at 57 miles an hour. We have a 40 if we are diverging, but as far as I know, we are not diverging. I haven't seen any feathers, those white lights that point to the left and to the right, to tell me otherwise. However, we do have a cautionary aspect, so let's bring our speed down, minimum braking. I recently watched a
We are now
video
approaching Newton Abbot.
with well-known railway historian Tim Dunn trying out an LNER Class 801 simulator. And I learned a few interesting things from that, including that one should aim to be passing a single yellow aspect at no more than, I think he said 30 miles an hour with your speed decreasing. Unless I'm mixing what I had previously assumed that it's actually 60 miles an hour with your speed decreasing, brake applied. See, I'm going to have to go back and double check that. And these are exactly the kind of policies that I would be grateful to learn, so I could do this a little bit more precisely and professionally. Once again, I have slowed down a little bit prematurely, which means we're in danger of being late here, but we have 15 seconds to stop. This is going to be AWS. Because we are, of course, approaching a red signal here. And this gives me a perfect opportunity. Can I overshoot that a little? Maybe not. Maybe I can do it perfectly.
Newton Abbot.
Alright, DRA. Left side. Doors with
This
left
is the
hand.
Great Western Railway
And I will
service to
put myself in neutral so I can take my foot off of the vigilance pedal. One thing you haven't been seeing is that the buttons in Train Sim World here are synchronized to what I'm doing on my real panel here. Let's see if I press my diesel mode button over here. You'll see the diesel mode presses. Many of these are working that way now. I guess I could do hand down. I could try to deregister my GSMR, but we are not going to deregister our GSMR. I posted an image. Oh, time to get going. Stand by. Close doors, left side. Visuals pedal down. Forward. We've got our interlock. DRA. Totnes, 7.6 miles. Alright. Brake hold. The brake hold button that I have on the side of my
Great Western Railway
PVT handle here is intended.
Totnes, Ivy Bridge, Plymouth, Devonport, Dockyard, Keyown, St. Budo Ferry Road, Saltash, St. Germans, Liscard, Bodwin Parkway, Lost Withiam, Parr, St. Austin, Truro, Redroof, Camborne, Hale, St. Earth, and Penzance.
The brake hold button there
The
is
next
intended.
station is Totnes.
That's the only problem with the announcements. I don't want to talk over her. The brake hold button is designed to allow you to start on a hill without rolling backwards. Excuse me. In between releasing the brakes and starting to accelerate. You don't want the train to start rolling. So you hold the brake hold button and it keeps a small amount of braking applied as power is also applied. In the US we sometimes call that power braking, and can be used for stopping or starting depending on what your goal is. Let me move my mouse a little way. And I am pleased that this brake hold button here is connected into Train Sim World. Train Simulator Classic has a very minimal interface, let's say, to the Class 801, 802, etc. However, I purchased the Armstrong Powerhouse Enhanced Class 800 series, and I've been very pleased with how many things that they expose. I'm sure there'll be a future video in which I show my setup operating Train Sim Classic, most likely in the near future. Let's coast here. We don't want to start speeding. I believe I haven't sped so far this scenario, which I'm glad of. If anything, I've heard on the side of being just a little too sluggish. 6.9 miles to Totnes. As I've spoken about in many previous videos, admittedly it's been a long time since I've been very active with train simulator streams, but I used to talk about the challenge of pronouncing British place names as an American. And I mean, from what I can read, even as a British person, but I am at a significant disadvantage as an American person of not frequently hearing these places spoken aloud. Start to slow down. We are going up a hill. One of the things that is still not immersive in Train Simulator is not being able to feel the hills up, hills down, the cant of the track, the super elevation as we go around curves. 1.8% grade up, so I really give it the wellies. Give it some welly, excuse me. Let me not seem more ignorant than I am. We've got a 55-mile-an-hour limit coming up, apparently. That's an unusual limit. But I can keep it accelerating such as it is. 49. This is a genuine, I think, Class 150 ATP-enabled speedometer, meaning that it can display speed limit information in green and yellow LEDs around the outside. It also has this 3-character display, which is meant to be used to display information. So it can be used to show, as I discovered today in reading documentation, self-test information when you're performing a self-test on an ATP system. It can also tell the driver why a brake application has been initiated by the ATP system in the relatively small section of UK train network where ATP is active between Bristol and London Paddington on the Great Western Main Line. So it can decide that you're not slowing down fast enough for an upcoming speed restriction and apply the brake for you. And it can also just be useful to warn you of upcoming speed limit changes. I have repurposed those 3 characters to make a speedometer that's similar to the one in the Javelin Class 395 2% speeding. Where it shows you your current speed as a digital readout, as well as, when possible, your trend in speed, whether you're accelerating, decelerating, or pretty much staying at the same speed. And 1 mile an hour over. There we go. Speed limit. So I went a little bit over speed there, but not grossly. This is not quite prototypical, of course, having the speed readout on the speedometer like that. But it's sufficiently helpful to me that I've been sticking with it. Maybe in the future I'll offer the ability to switch between true simulated ATP mode and this modified user-friendly mode. 3.8 miles to Totnes. We're going down a hill now, so I'm having to keep going into minimum braking and then back to coast to maintain my speed. Some of these trains have speed regulation. Not only do I tend not to use that in general, I don't know if Train Sim World has actually implemented that. In that same video with the LNER Class 801 simulator in Tim Dunn, they were showing the use of the TMS screen here to set the speed limits. Clear AWS and clear signal. We've got some scenic little hills that we're winding through here that I vaguely remember from my one and only HST trip to Plymouth. My earlier point about doing a good job of being a train driver while simultaneously adding audio commentary, describing what's going on, various anecdotes and information, etc. Talking about my train simulator setup here. It occurs to me that in future videos, although it is a little bit more time consuming, I could always just focus on recording a great video with a very smooth ride and precision in my operation, and then add the commentary track later. Of course, that doesn't lend itself to a good stream. Now I can see on the HUD there that there's a restrictive signal coming up, cautionary aspect I should say, but I wouldn't know that in real life because there was no pattern repeater. Here's the AWS route. That appeared to be a flashing yellow aspect, flashing amber aspect. In many railroad and railway signaling systems, flashing upgrades the aspect. So for example, in many US signaling systems, a green in the middle of 3 signal heads might be a medium clear, whereas a flashing green might be a limited clear, which generally has a higher speed limit associated with it. Now I'm being very cautious here, I'm going 35 and 55. Mostly because it's unfamiliar territory here, and I had that cautionary aspect, so I don't know what to expect ahead. And I would assume that in British railway driving, as in most things railway and railroad, if you're not sure, it is better to be slow and late than fast and unsafe. 1 mile to Totnes, 40 miles an hour, just 60. We do have a 45 limit coming up if I cheat and look at my HUD in the top right. I would like to get to a point where I'm sufficiently familiar with some of the routes that I operate this Class 80X on, that I don't need that HUD at all, that I know the speed limits. But that is practice and route learning. Let's keep it down to 40 towards diverging switch that we were just warned about, and that white feather, that set of white lights pointing to the left, means that we are going to be taking a little jaunt off to the left at Totnes, which is in 800 yards.
We are now approaching
well under
Totnes.
control. Gotta remind myself that the brakes are pretty good on this train. Interesting. In this case, it's not so much a jaunt left as it is continuing straight. I used to always try to enter the platform at 37 miles an hour. I somehow found that that was a good speed for almost any train, any platform, any train length. I don't know why 37, but it just seemed to work well. So I will probably continue with that vague rule of thumb, although I believe in that, once again, in that same LNER video, the advice was to enter the platform at no more than 30 miles an hour. Again, I apologize for fanning the brakes here, which means repeatedly switching between braking and coasting.
This is Totnes.
Left-hand side. Repeatedly increasing and
This is
decreasing
a Great Western Railway service to Penzance.
the amount of braking. Brake force. 45 mile an hour limit right now, as that handy, that's that handy sign there says 25 miles an hour. Totnes, ready to lock the doors. Got our interlock. I'll give the incorrect 2 on the bell. And off we go. And I should have put us into full service braking there, which I did not. That is my oversight. Even if you gently brake at
Welcome
the
aboard
platform.
this Great Western Railway service to Penzance. We'll be calling at Ivybridge, Plymouth, Devonport, Dockyard, Keon, St. Budo Ferry Road, Saltash, St. Germans, Liscard, Bodmin Parkway, Lost Withiel, Parr, St. Austell, Truro, Redruth, Camborne, Hale, St. Earth, and Penzance.
I believe it's good practice to go into full service braking when you're stopped at a
The
station.
next station is Ivybridge.
The other 25 mile an hour limit that we're in right now. However, if you look closely at the air pressure gauge there, the brake gauge, you will see that when we open the doors, it automatically increases the amount of air pressure in the brake cylinders, brake cylinders. We've got to get our whole train length into this new faster limit before I can accelerate. There we go, 60 miles an hour. Of course, in the real world, you don't have a handy little HUD up there that tells you when the back of your train has cleared the section and is in the higher speed limit. So, although there are now a number of gadgets that'll help you do that on some modern trains, in general, it's just good to have a sense of when you reach what point your train is cleared into the new speed limit. And of course, that's further complicated by having different types of train with different car lengths and different numbers of cars. If I risk looking at my TMS here, you'll see we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 car, and it also summarizes that on the right side there for easy parsing. A 10 car consist today, or rake, as I believe the UK term is. Nine miles to Ivybridge. I've actually played very little Train Sim World compared to Train Sim Classic. Between actually playing and using Train Simulator Classic to test out my train simulator as it's developed over the last 3 years, I have hundreds and hundreds of hours. I think I'm over 500, possibly even more in Train Simulator Classic. But Train Sim World I have not played very much of at all. In no small part because the routes are so short compared to Train Sim Classic, Train Simulator Classic, which I'm given to understand is mostly a limitation of how time-consuming and therefore expensive it is to create a route. One of the things that spurred me to found GeoPipe in the first place. Geospatial AI startup. Coast. So if they could take the relative realism of the Train Sim world and combine that with the route length of Train Simulator Classic, I would be very pleased to be going over 2% grade. So if I could feel that with something like a racing sim or flight sim platform, I would know that I would need to power up. I could feel the deceleration as we went up the hill. Maybe one day. Looks like we have a little snow coming. You can see that I don't have my windshield wiper control here yet. I have some of the windshield wiper controls. The demister and the cleaning fluid and the wiper position knob, but I don't yet have the wiper speed control. I will have that very soon. Set this to speed, which I believe means 25 strokes per second. 25 per second, per minute, excuse me, per minute. I got distracted because I noticed that in faffing around with windshield wipers, I have started speeding. There we go, back down to 60. Still going up our hill, so we can put the power back in. Clear AWS, clear signal, and it's gotten quite dark. I'll check that my headlights are on full. They are. I don't know if you all can see the little activate Windows watermark on my real screen. I don't believe it's captured by my video capture in OBS. But this past summer, 2025, I upgraded my desktop with a bunch of new stuff, new motherboard, new CPU, new RAM, new graphics card, which turned out to be excellent timing because the cost of RAM has quadrupled since then. But unfortunately, that convinced Windows 10 that I must have gotten a new computer. There were too many hardware changes, so alas, I'm going to have to repurchase and reactivate it. Clear AWS, clear signal. A little under 6 miles to Ivy Ridge. Tunnel time. There's a few things that, other than the speedometer, that are not quite as accurate as I could possibly make them to a real Class 800 series. One of those is my AWS Sunflower. It's obviously a big mechanical AWS Sunflower that goes clunk when it changes. It's getting a little snowy here. That's very pretty. And again, I'm talking rather than keeping an eye on my speedometer. The prototype has a smaller and LED AWS Sunflower, and it has 3 instruments, where I have my 2 instruments, my air gauge and my AWS Sunflower. It has an air gauge, a braking effort gauge, and a small LED illuminated AWS Sunflower. I like the solid mechanical clunk of the Sunflower changing state. Besides just being cool, it also seems like a good reminder that, you know, your AWS has gone from clear to caution or caution to clear. But if I ever do want to make this truly as accurate as I possibly could, I would have to get rid of that and replace it with an LED version, which I've occasionally seen available, but I could also potentially make it myself. Notch 1 power right now, 15 miles an hour. This section of hills up and down is definitely a good challenge for my speed precision. One of the several flaws that I've noticed in Train Sim Worlds 801 and 802 are that wheel slip and slide doesn't seem to quite work correctly. This indicator / button here that has a picture of a leaf on it, which you probably can't see, but trust me, is meant to indicate both wheel slip and wheel slide. Wheel slip being when you're accelerating and the motors go faster than the wheels are gripping the rails. In other words, the wheels spin on the rails. And that can cause a variety of problems, including damage to the rails and especially damage to the wheels. Well, actually, I should say damage to the wheels, and especially damage to the rails, because it can actually melt or deform like an arch in the rail. So modern trains have safety systems that detect and prevent that. This little indicator lights up, is supposed to light up when the wheel slip protection has been triggered. The opposite problem is called wheel slide. Both of these are generally when the rail is wet, icy, snowy, or covered in leaves, or that wet leaf slurry that's such a problem. Wheel slide is when the wheels are not turning, but the train is still moving, so you're basically dragging a stopped or slowed wheel along the rail. That has the opposite potential problem, where you can create a flat spot in the wheel. You're spreading the wear out on the rail over a larger area, so it's not so bad for the rail, but your wheel can get a flat spot, which can go clunk, 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 as your train is traveling along. If you've ever felt that rhythmic clunking that gets faster the faster your train is going, that could be a flat spot. A small flat spot is not what's called condemnable. It won't cause that wheel to be removed. But if it gets to a certain depth, then you do indeed need to replace, or at least try to retrue, it's called, that wheel. It is really a picturesque little area of, I think we're in, I don't know if we're in Devon or Cornwall right now. But the winding track, the trees, the snow, this is really quite pleasant. We must be going down right now. 2 miles to Ivy Bridge. The random weather changes in Train Sim World is another feature that I am quite fond of. It makes it feel much more realistic than the same weather every time you play that scenario, the entire scenario. And it's either, the ground is either completely covered in snow in Train Simulator Classic, or there's no snow. That 60 mile an hour limit, switching between coast and minimum braking. Now with a little less than a mile until Ivy Bridge. Nice sky. With the snow and the apparently very late sunrise, it almost looks like sunset. Less than a kilometer away. Put in some minimum braking.
We are now approaching Ivy Bridge.
Go notch 2. Back it off to notch 1. Two. Notch 1. Notch 2. Notch 1. Coast. I want to get my whole train on this apparently very short platform. That'll do it. 4 yards.
This is
Full
Ivy
service.
Bridge.
Left side. Left hand. Doors open. And I'll put it in
This is a Great Western Railway
Neutral
service
here.
to Penzance.
my very stiff reverser handle there, so that I can give my foot a rest from sitting on the vigilance pedal. This video is very much an experiment. I looked at my OBS recordings folder and I saw that I didn't even make a single Train Sim World or Train Simulator Classic recording last year. So I think I've let my bar for posting videos become very high indeed.
Welcome aboard this Great Western Railway service to Penzance. We'll be calling at Plymouth.
If you're watching this, then I guess I decided to post it.
Kian, St. Budo Ferry Road, Saltash, St. Germans, Liscard, Bodwin Parkway, Lost Withiam, Parr, St. Austin, Truro, Redruth, Camborne, Hale, St. Earth, and Penzance. The next station is Plymouth.
Alright, next and final stop, Plymouth. We should be there in about 12 minutes. Nice viaduct here. One of the things about doing route learning and learning the speed limit changes would be getting to know the names of some of the landmarks along the way. I'm vaguely knowledgeable about the East Coast Main Line, specifically the section between London and Peterborough. I've driven that route many times in Train Simulator Classic for the last 10 years or so. Infrequently enough that I would not consider myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but at least I have a vague sense of what stations are where and some of the speed limits. It's pretty easy though. Basically, they increase as you go north or down from London, then they're fast for a while, and then as you near Peterborough, they rapidly decrease to, I think it's 30 miles an hour for most platforms, if not even less. You may hear the small and plaintive meows of my starving feline companions in the background. So peaceful here. If anyone watching this is from the area, I'm curious how accurate you feel this route is to reality. If you think they've done a good job of capturing the real countryside, towns, and railway in this area. Miles an hour according to my speedometer, but as you can see 60 on the HUD. I suspect it may come down to a rounding versus flooring issue. rounding to the nearest full mile per hour, and I should not be. And I got distracted thinking about that, and lost some speed. Interesting. I'm fortunate enough to have a sufficiently good graphics card in my computer that I can turn everything in Train Sim World pretty much up to ultra on this 4K monitor that I'm playing on. But not everything in Train Sim World is always at an ultra level of quality in and of itself, like that little puff of snow that you saw coming off of that train. I'm considering a future setup for my videos where instead of doing the screencasting plus the video, where I instead mount a camera above and behind me and just maybe like a wide angle lens, just capture it all, you know, as if you were standing behind me in the train cab. I would be curious about your feedback on that if you think that's a good idea. The stiffness of this handle means I sometimes overshoot what I'm trying to do. And that would be less so, I think, if I had it mounted in an enclosure. Now we have an 80 mile an hour limit. Very nice. Accelerate. Power. If I was really in the cab of a Class 802, I think I would probably want to have my tea in a thermos. The master controller going downhill actually has a little cup holder built in, a thermos holder, I should say, built in. If I ever manage to get the correct power brake controller, master controller for the Class 801, 802, 805, 810, etc. Then I would be thrilled to actually put my beverages in a thermos and put them right on that master controller. All in the name of realism. Realism and professionalism. A little under 5 miles to Plymouth. And we are speeding again. So we're still here. That's a tough one. I intend to create some videos where I show, like short videos, or maybe a video that shows set piece by piece how and that all the different instruments here work. You know, show how the AWS Sunflower works, show how the coupling works, show how the TPWS system works, show how to change power modes. Now we're on level ground again. Show how the GSMR works, which has gone blank. Oh, that's fine. Just sleep. I don't want to register, I just want to see what's right there. It's strange. Nope. See, I was busy faffing around with the GSMR and I missed that speed limit change. That was a rather serious one. 15 miles an hour over the limit is not great. That's the kind of error I typically cut out of a final video before I post it, or, you know, save, reload, and then splice the video together. So I will see what that means in terms of this video. This video is meant to be a showcase more than anything of this system, this simulator that I built. So I hope you'll forgive me a few foibles and mistakes as I get used to the route, the territory, and even my simulator. Those are the same thing. The route / territory and my simulator. Miles. We have Lyra Depot over there on the left, which until recently was the home of many HSTs. Now is the home of many IETs, which is DWR's name for these trains. Saw that little 60-mile-an-hour limit warning triangular sign next to the track. So we'll bring ourselves down well under 60. 55 and then a 25 according to the HUD. Here's the 60. We're on the 55 too. Doing just fine because we are going up a hill. That sign just there said 55 limit for passenger trains, 40 for freight or goods trains. We have a cautionary aspect ahead apparently. Start gently bringing it down for the 25 that we know is following this 55 limit. Limit. This AWS ramp coming up, probably at the end of this tunnel, is going to, of course, alert us. There it is. Okay, keep it under 25. Single yellow and platform 4. So we know our next signal is likely to be solid red, or danger.
We are now approaching Plymouth.
Got a little lunar white signal there down low. Keeping it at 20-ish, just to be safe. Again, it's no unfamiliar territory. Oh, the point of my whole lecture about wheel slip and wheel slide is I did some testing and I found that while Train Sim World seems to simulate wheel slide protection correctly, this light lights up if I try to slam on the brakes when I'm moving right along, go into emergency for instance. I want to try to get down to 10 miles an hour for these TPWS grids up here and not go into emergency. Alright, let's go 10 miles an hour. I thought there were TPWS grids there, maybe they were just covered by the snow. It seems like wheel slip protection was not enabled.
Plymouth.
We've got a red signal, DRA, left hand, doors open.
This is a Great Western Railway
And I'm
service
going
to
to
Penzance.
put it in neutral. And take my foot off the pedal. Also gonna decrease the windshield wipers. Also looks like we have a light on in here, which I didn't realize. Alright, there we go. So we did pretty well. Achieved our objectives, mostly stayed under the limit. You can see there were a few little instances of speeding there. We used our wipers. We did use our safety systems. It's annoying that they didn't give us credit for that. On time bonus, accuracy bonus. Didn't leave the vehicle unsafely. Got a gold medal there. So that was fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I hope you enjoyed getting to see my train simulator setup here. I look forward to showing you more soon, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.